So you'll be doing a photo shoot of a silverware, so creating beauty from the ordinary. For this project, we're going to be looking specifically at the artist Andre Kurtz's. He did a whole series of photography focusing on forks. He also did a lot of street photography as well, but you'll see a lot of commonalities between both sets of artwork in terms of what he was specifically looking at, such as shadows, shapes, line, the elements and principles of art. So to imitate his work, the main thing we're going to be looking at is directional light. So typically bare clear glass bulbs will create bolder shadows than a fluorescent bulb or a shaded light. The metal can lights we have will give you a strong light that covers more area, meaning you'll have less shadow. You can also use a flashlight to have a smaller, more direct light on your subject. So really focusing in one specific area, and then everything else will be more in shadow. So once you've identified what kind of light source you want, how do you make the most of it? So adjusting the position and distance of the light will definitely alter the intensity of the shadows. If you look at Kurta's photos, you'll see that there's very little mid-tone detail. Typically, they're very high contrast photos that emphasize the shape, the lines that are within the image. Aside from the depth and definition of the shadow, it's also angle also plays a significant role. So if you have your fork or other utensil resting on the edge of a concave bowl or plate, it'll elongate or alter the shadow. This distorted shape contrasts with the realistic outline that is cast onto a flat surface with the light at the right angle of the subject. So when looking at lights and angles and shadows, so think back to photo 1 when we covered our basic lighting. So these are examples of different angles of light, different directions, hard light versus soft light. And you'll notice that in each image, the shadows created are drastically different. Also, what is highlighted, really bright, varies depending on the light source you have. If you need more information or you need a refresher, there is a PowerPoint and a video in Google Classroom under Lighting Basics. So you can go ahead and take a look at that for more info. Looking at form is really going to be one of the main things. So it's not about the fork. It's not about the spoon. It's not about whatever the object is. It's about the form that's being created. So there's a reason why Kurtas chose the fork for his tabletop photos. No other cutlery is has as unique and intriguing form, maybe between intricate handles or just the forked part of it. Those details are what makes a good photo. You can combine multiple items to make your composition more appealing. So for example, having multiple forks, maybe having a fork and a spoon, all of that you can utilize. The lines of the forks or spoons can also make for good photos. So not only are you looking at the form, but also the lines. Whether through shadows or reflections, look at the interplay between the different items on the table. So if you have multiple pieces of silverware, how are they interacting? Are they stacked together? Are they kind of intertwined? Are they side by side? How does that work? You can also use different surfaces to create interesting compositions. We have mirrors that you can place your objects on. You can also have different backdrops and tabletop images printed out as well. So with the tabletops and backdrops, they are part of your composition. So you could simply have solid black, solid white as your backdrop or tabletop, or you can print out other images that will kind of showcase your fork or spoon. Because our cutlery is for the most part very reflective, chances are you'll see whatever your image is reflected in the surface. An example on the left, we have that polka dot background. So that is reflected in the bottom of the spoon. So you start to get that distortion. If you're interested in having any images printed out, be sure to put them in the assignment in Google Classroom and I will print them out for you. But keep in mind that you don't want your images too distracting, so look closely at it and make sure that it'll actually work with the cutlery you have. Fancy silverware. So you can have a lot of different types of cutlery. You could have very basic designs, or you could have the fancy kind that have engraving on them, different ends. Maybe they have little sculptures on them, like the image on the bottom right with the little teapot at the end of the spoon. But you can really look at those little details as a way to showcase your silverware. To really get good detail of this, you'll need a macro lens or some sort of close-up way of photographing. We do have some lenses that you can use, but the digital cameras on their own, you can get pretty close to your subject with them. So with close-up capability, you'll definitely have a chance to photograph all the little twists and turns in the metal, different hallmarks, or even blemishes. It's those small details that often look great when gathered together in a series of work. So if you go online, you will find tons and tons of inspiration. This is not a new idea. People have been photographing silverware forever. So definitely do a little bit of research, get some ideas of maybe different ways you can position your silverware, different ways to try to light your silverware. Maybe you can find ways to mimic the shadows created and try to figure that out. So when you're taking your pictures, really think about the angles that you're shooting at. Are you shooting directly above the silverware, such as the image on the left? Or are you shooting from the side, like the image on the right? Neither one is right or wrong. They give you completely different looks. Here's an example of a book being used as a tabletop, and then you see the reflection in the spoon. So you can bring in objects from home if you want books or text within your composition. You definitely can do that. Here's some examples of student work. So you'll see there's a lot of variety. Some of these images were taken at home, so that's why you have a little bit more range. But if you want to move away from our studio space and take pictures outside, you're more than welcome to. But you can bring in other objects from home that can maybe help mimic some of the things that you see here. So these are two different series by the same students. So on the left, that student was using kind of your standard fork and spoon, and they were really looking at how they related to each other as far as their positioning. On the right, also kind of playing with how they're intertwining, but utilizing multiples together. So just some more examples. Shallow depth of field will be your friend for this. So little in focus, little number as far as your aperture goes. But having that little bit in focus, you'll really be able to showcase those really minute details that you have. If you want to bring in other objects to kind of work with it, so things that forks and spoons and knives typically hang out with, you are more than welcome to. So if you want to bring in sugar or flour or salt or some food stuff to work with, you definitely can. Okay, so the options are really endless as far as this goes. So experiment, try different things, and see where it takes you. So when you're taking your pictures, try to take really nice pictures. Don't just stick a fork on the counter in front of your camera, because that's going to be really, really boring. Really look for shadows, play with light, consider your background. Use the composition tools you have learned, rule of thirds, filling the frame, line, shape, form, framing, texture. Take advantage of that blurry background with shallow depth of field. Composition is key. Your main focus is to utilize both vertical and horizontal compositions. So you'll be doing 2 separate contact sheets, one for horizontal and one for vertical. But you can definitely do that tilted angle for other pictures as well. So in the end, you're going to be turning in 2 contact sheets, 10 horizontal, 10 vertical. So at least 20 pictures of silverware. But as always, the more pictures you take, the more options you have. Because for the contact sheets, I really want just your 10 best of each orientation. Okay? In the end, you'll be editing the best of the best, and that's at least 5 photographs. So of the 20, you're going to pick your favorite best 5 to edit.